Hi, and welcome to the wonderful world of Microsoft Teams Rooms. My name is Michel Baumann, and I'm the Partner Technical Lead for Microsoft Teams Rooms in EMEA. This is part of the Partner Enablement Program. We created it for you as a new person in this wonderful world of Teams Rooms. Today, the team is going to talk you through what's Microsoft Teams Rooms, what does the environment look like, how about licensing, and what kind of devices are there out there. Let me hand you over to Mo and Rob.
Thank you, Michel, and welcome to our Teams Rooms introduction training, a whistle-stop guide and tour around Microsoft Teams Rooms devices. You're joined here today with myself, Mo Khalifa, and my colleague,
Robert Carlson.
And together we form the partner technology strategists for Microsoft Teams Rooms devices across the EMEA region. And to start you off with, we really wanted to start off by setting the scene. And setting the scene is really talking about this buzzword that we see today, which is what we call hybrid workplace. And moving forwards, hybrid workplace is pretty much here to stay. When we look at the way things used to be back in the past and the way things have moved towards the future, this new hybrid work is here to stay, and it's completely going to change the way we work. A lot of organizations are kind of telling their staff members that there's no need for you to return back to work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, working from the same desk anymore. Now they're giving us the flexibility to be able to work from pretty much anywhere on any device and using something like Microsoft Teams to keep you connected. And one of the challenges that we find today with hybrid working is how do we, one, create equality around in-person meetings as well as physically kind of being there and working from home, but also more importantly, collaboration. How do we ensure that we're able to collaborate with others regardless of where they may be? When we look at hybrid meetings, as I mentioned earlier on, is pretty much here to stay. And this particular slide I really like because it kind of puts it into perspective what the last 2 years have been. Pre-pandemic, people in the office had the advantage. It was very easy for me while I was in the office to run over to another office, grab hold of Rob and drag him into my meeting to kind of continue to collaborate with each other. But then lockdown kicked in. And as soon as lockdown kicked in and COVID came into our lives, during the pandemic, we all pretty much had the same issues and the same concerns and the same challenges that we had, regardless of where you may have been within the organization. But then fast forward 2 years down the line and moving forwards, how are we preparing ourselves for this new way of working, this new hybrid way of working? And more importantly, how do we ensure equal footing of meetings, whether we do them physically or whether we're joining them virtually?
The best way, of course, to be in this new normal and to try out our best way from each and every organization is really to go and explore the Teams Rooms experience, because every meeting room could be a Teams room. We could really fit any type of room with the right equipment to have this experience where we are really getting the feeling of being in the same environment, being creative, being there for each other, and really working with all the tools that we have in the Teams platform. So Teams Rooms are really the extension of Teams meetings on the Teams platform, and the best experience is really when you have the full version of this. So every room could be a Teams room. And the value proposition that we bring to this is that we have inclusiveness. And that is really to get you into the feeling, of course, of having that best meeting done with Teams on a Teams Rooms device. It should be something that is really easy for you to use, which means that you just go into that room and press join and it just works. It should be flexible, so we have a solution for every type of meeting room and every type of work style. So there's always some solution to bring to that room and to that work style that you have. And finally, I would say, perhaps also the most important thing, is that this is something that is secure and manageable, which makes the IT admin a master of taking care of their meeting rooms in a safe way, making sure that they are up to date, that they are working when the employees just go into the room and just press them on click join to start the meeting. So the value pillars is something that we will deep dive a bit more of. So take us away with the inclusiveness.
Absolutely, thank you. So the 4 pillars are really, really important in terms of how we go ahead and talk about Microsoft Teams Rooms and Teams Rooms devices. And let's start off with the first pillar, which is what we call inclusive or inclusiveness. As mentioned earlier on, one of the biggest challenges that we have is how do we create that equality across meetings, regardless of where you're working from? How do we get that same consistent experience, whether we're sitting in front of our PC or actually physically there inside of a meeting room using a Microsoft Teams Rooms device? And for us at Microsoft, equality and inclusiveness was quite key. So over the last 2 years, we've worked tremendously hard on things like our audio codecs, our video codecs, to ensure that we provide great audio video quality regardless of what your bandwidth looks like. Of course, we've also added new technologies to help us in this new way of working. So for example, it's been the norm while you're sitting at home and you're on a Teams call for your children to come barging into the room. It happens to me all the time. Or your dog coming in and barking, or the lawnmower going off. So we've introduced noise cancellation technology in the cloud. So Teams Rooms as a standard will be able to effectively block out any background noise. Of course, when we work with OEM partners, a lot of OEM partners will also include noise suppression technology within their own devices as well. And of course, inclusiveness doesn't just stop there either. Inside of a meeting room space, if you have a Microsoft Teams Rooms device and you've already dialed into that meeting, you can effectively walk into that meeting, pull out your laptop or pull out your mobile phone while there's a meeting running via a Microsoft Teams Rooms device and dial into that same meeting. And if you dial into that same meeting, your phone or your laptop will recognize you're already in a meeting. It stops its cameras, mics, and speakers, so there's no interference, but then gives you a whole variety of different options that enable you to stay included as part of that meeting. And you can see here on this slide, we've got some options of where we can provide live reaction, so raising your hand or giving a little love heart, starting recording, initializing the Microsoft whiteboard, or even just sharing your camera or your screen. So for us, increasing that engagement by utilizing other devices is quite key as well. And then, of course, what we see is one of the bigger challenges around analog versus digital. And we have this problem all the time. So, for example, if Robert is inside of a meeting room space and I'm working from home, if Robert and his team decide to get up and start using a whiteboard, now I'm talking an old school analog whiteboard, and starts using that whiteboard, already I'm omitted or not included as part of that meeting because I can't see what he's doing. But with Microsoft Teams Rooms devices, we've introduced what we call intelligent content capture. And effectively what we do with these content cameras is we point them at a traditional whiteboard. And when we start writing on this whiteboard, it effectively digitizes that writing and portrays it back into that meeting room space. So me sitting at home can absolutely see what is going on while Robert and team are actually using like an analog whiteboard across there. It's phenomenal. I highly recommend you try it. You can try it yourself using Teams today. So the next time that you're in a meeting, click the share icon in the top right-hand corner. And then on the list, you'll notice one that says content camera. Hit the content camera, point your webcam at a whiteboard or a white sheet of paper, should I say, and you will get exactly the same experience, but on a shorter scale.
It's quite magical, right? It really feels that you're getting there and you're transparent and really gets the text to shine through you in a magic way. So another way to bring magic, I would say, to the meeting room is also to have this transcription of what's being said in the room and having the platform understand what's being said and then transcribe that onto the meeting so that we can both, from a inclusiveness perspective, see better what's hearing and understand much better, but also use that text file afterwards so for the meeting notes and go back to it. Another thing then what happens is when we are getting back to the offices and we have people joining from a room, we might not really know who is in that room. So what we're bringing here is the intelligent the intelligent speaker, or I might say the intelligent microphone, because that's where the magic happens. So we have a hardware solution that we could put into a room. And with that, we're able to understand who is actually in that meeting room. And we can attribute that person to the meeting as a contender, which means that we can also put that avatar on who is speaking actually in that room. So instead of having the room being the person and all the people being unknown, we're then able to understand who is in the room and who is actually speaking. Both very good for the live meeting, but also for the actual transcription that we're using afterwards in the meeting. So there's a lot of things that we're bringing to the Teams Rooms experience that will enhance the experience just compared to both how it was for a couple of years ago when we were in actual meeting rooms and before the pandemic, but also compared to just having your perhaps personal experience mirrored out with the bring your own device solution, because that will never give the same features and experience and ease of use as for having a Teams rooms experience in your meeting rooms.
And that's quite key. I mean, when we look at the inclusiveness pillar, it forms a massive part of Microsoft Teams Rooms devices. And that's exactly what we need to, as Microsoft and as our strategic partners, kind of portray back to our customers that the way the world is right now is completely changed. Hybrid work is here to stay. And we need to create equality and inclusiveness regardless of where we may be and having that same experience. In case you haven't noticed on camera, there's a pretty big height difference between me and Robert. And if Robert is standing in front of one of these whiteboards, the simple fact of using a content camera with intelligent capture, the simple fact that this camera can see through Robert and still show his writing makes me feel great, because me being short in height, I want to be able to see exactly what's behind on that whiteboard as well. But of course, as we move into the next pillar, we talk about ease of use, easy to use for everybody. And for us, it's really about maintaining that consistent user experience across the board. One of the biggest challenges we've had, even before COVID was a thing, was the different platforms that were out there, the different platforms that were available, and not having the same consistent user experience. And for us in the Microsoft Teams Rooms world, we want to ensure that regardless of which device it is that you use, from which OEM partner, so you could have a Crestron or a Poly or a Logitech or a Dell or any one of our strategic partners that build these devices for us, regardless of which one you use, you will get that same user experience across the board. And from an IT perspective, we ensure safety and security as well. So having the ability to have the same look and feel across the board, but also making sure that it's secure enough that a user can't just come in, hit the settings button and change anything on settings without any administrator passwords is quite key. And then, of course, when we look at today's world, COVID-19, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. We've introduced a whole range of different features on Microsoft Teams Rooms devices to really cater for this new need to ensure that workplaces remain COVID safe and COVID free. So we have a whole range of different safety features applied onto our devices. As an example, we've added recently Cortana. So you can effectively walk into a room and simply use your voice to join into a meeting. You simply would walk in and say, "Hey Cortana, start my next meeting." And she would automatically dial the meeting, and you can ask her to call someone or cancel a meeting. She will do that. So it's a true zero touch experience across there. And then, of course, we work with our strategic partners in terms of cameras. So people counting cameras. We're bringing that telemetry data onto the Teams platform. So very soon you'll be able to effectively tell a room that this is a 4-person meeting room. And as soon as the 4th person walks in, it will show up a little banner to say, room is at capacity inside and outside of the room. And it can also be captured via Teams Admin Center if you wanted to.
And no matter what type of room or what size of room or what type of workflow that you would like to do, there's a Teams room solution for you. So we could really bring the best experience to life no matter what size of room or what you would like to do in this room. So we have helped you, the customers out there, to understand through simple drawings and good documentation on what are the best practices on how to equip and how to build your rooms. So there are good guidelines, and we could really go from the smallest focus room to the largest town hall or educational room type. So really there's something for all. So with that, we can also do different types of solutions, and we have different hardware vendors. So take us through how that looks.
Absolutely, absolutely. So when we look at all the different types of rooms that we have, of course, we have a whole range of different devices out there as well. And in today's session, we're not going to talk you through each and every one. Please do reach out to your OEM partner or your local PTS, and we'll be happy to support you. But we can effectively tell you about the different types of devices with a single slide. So this particular slide that you're looking at right now kind of buckets Teams Rooms devices into 3 distinct bucket sets. We'll start off on the right-hand side, the all-in-ones. Now, all-in-ones typically are devices like the Microsoft Surface Hub, an all singing, all dancing collaborative display that runs first-party and third-party apps and provides you with best-in-class Microsoft whiteboard capabilities. It is an absolute beast of a device, works really, really well. Fortunately, not the cheapest device out there on the market, but it is, if you want best-in-class, Surface Hub kind of fits into that all-in-one category. And then as we move into the second pillar, the middle pillar, we have what we call our integrated solutions. And integrated solutions are typically devices that are on the Android platform. We commonly call them Microsoft Teams Rooms on Android, or MTROA for short, which is an internal term that we would use just with resellers and with Microsoft. Now, with the integrated solutions, these are typically all-in-one bars. So they've got cameras, mics, and speakers all built into a single unit and very easy to deploy. So it's a single cable that plugs in terms of power, HDMI, and effectively a network cable. And you place it above or below your TV screen, and you're pretty much good to go. And then, of course, here on the left-hand side, we have by far the most popular, which is what we call our modular solutions. And modular tends to be, most of the time, Microsoft Teams Rooms and Windows, although there are now some Android modular solutions coming to market as well. And the reason we say modular is because it has separate cameras, mics, and speakers, which means you're able to scale across different room sizes. Talking about scaling across different room sizes, Rob, how about you talk to us about a few of the different room sizes that you can cater?
Yeah, sure. So just giving you some examples, we have made a lot of examples here of how to do this, and depending on what you would like to do. So if you are having in this case, a focus room, that's a small room that perhaps today don't have any equipment because previously we just used that for on-site meetings, but now as people have moved out of the offices and are different sites, you need to have some sort of equipment here as well. So if you see this room as a creational workspace where you would like to go up to the wall and start whiteboarding and do this both for the people who's in the room, but also mainly for the people who's outside and doing these meetings from any other place, a Surface Hub device is a perfect solution for that. It also brings the audio and video piece to the meeting, of course. Or you go for the Teams Room solutions. But if you then perhaps also use a touchscreen, then you can whiteboard enable that so that you also can use that touchscreen as a whiteboarding surface as well. So you can really mix and match in this case, depending on how you see it. So we do guide you, depending on how you see your workflow, to have different categories in these rooms. Then just moving up to, in this case, the medium conference room. That might be the more traditional room before the pandemic, at least, where we could be like 8 to 10 people and have this long table where we were facing each other and, of course, facing that wall. With the new capabilities that we're bringing now, with added value from like having a chat or having other components coming into that screen estate, it could really be something that we're also adding the size of the screens so that we could both have good visibility to the people, but also to the new content that we are screening up. And of course, that could also be in combination with the Surface Hub. So we have both the audio and video piece on the Teams Rooms device, but for the content creation and the whiteboarding, we have a Surface Hub coupled into this as well. And for the large conference room, we might go to even larger screen estates, of course, that we could then fit for this, or perhaps a projector to really make that 100-inch or something. But also to figure out how is the furniture layout here? Because if we have this type of room more for education, as an example, we might also think, what's the best experience now to care for that we can both see the speaker, but also see the people who are sitting in the room so that we can also mix and match and switch those cameras. So there's a lot of things that we might do differently depending on what we see that we will do in these actual rooms. But there are good guidance, and we have that on our doc sites for you to go and get your insights of how we guide you and your customers.
And it was very interesting when Robert was mentioning about coupling a Surface Hub as part of the mix. And this slide here kind of talks a bit more about that as well, where a Microsoft Teams Rooms device is actually a really, really good piece of kit on its own. But we can absolutely enhance meeting rooms by simply adding additional components into a room. For example, having something called coordinated meetings, having a Surface Hub as part of a room build out with a Microsoft Teams Rooms device means you get the best of both worlds. So a Microsoft Teams Rooms device is phenomenal when it comes down to audio and video, whereas a Surface Hub, can do everything when it comes down to collaboration. Why not combine the two together? And we have a feature called Coordinated Meetings, which starts off both devices with a single one-touch join across there. Of course, we also have things like intelligent speakers. So Robert spoke about that a bit earlier on, where in order to get identification in a room, there's nothing worse than having 5 people in a meeting room and I'm working from home And when we're transcribing, all it says is meeting room 101 is talking, regardless of who's in the room. But with an intelligent speaker, adding that as part of a plug and play option with Microsoft Teams Rooms devices now means we can assign an identity to the person that's speaking inside of the room. And last but not least, we can absolutely add things like Teams panels. And Teams panels fit on the outside of a screen, where visually at a distance, you're able to see if the room is free, if the room is busy, if it's available, and we can do some additional things to it as well. For example, we can get customers to add what we call line of business apps onto it. So not only is it a scheduling type of display, but you can book your dinner or you can book your teas and coffees for the room directly via an app on the screen, or do room finding from there. The sky's the limit. It really just comes down to your customer and what types of apps they want to add on.
And then, of course, if you are then standardizing on Teams as a platform, you do your Teams meetings as well, and you have invested into your Teams Rooms devices, then there's a need, of course, to then being able to either participate on other platform solutions, because you might get an invite to a Zoom meeting or a WebEx meeting, or when you are sending out an invite, you might then need to have other platforms being able to join your meetings. So we have direct guest join. That's a good solution then for when you get that invite from the Zoom meeting or the WebEx meeting, or soon to be BlueJeans or GoToMeet. The Teams Rooms device could interpret that and just make a web join to that meeting. So it's nothing, it's no license, it's not extra, it's built into the platform, and it just works. If you then instead would like to invite, if you have a mixed environment with your customers, which means that they might have then gone to Teams as a platform and foundation, and they have started to invest in Teams Rooms devices, but they still have something else. The Cloud Video Interop service, or the CVI called many times, is that service. So when I invite someone, I also get that attachment of a SIP invite and a meeting code, so that any other device could join my meetings as well. So there is really a solution for being able to standardize on Teams Rooms devices, but not being locked in, so that you can join or you can invite people to your meetings.
And then, of course, when we look at one of the other pillars, which is secure and scalable. And of course, for Microsoft Teams Rooms, one of the biggest USPs, or one of the biggest shouts that we have with Microsoft Teams Rooms, is that native Teams experience and the fact that we can secure and you can scale it across a whole estate. When we talk about security, security is quite key for us. In fact, for us, one of the two biggest things we look out for when designing these devices is security and stability when it comes down to the actual device itself. And when we look at security, we secure not only from a hardware perspective, but also all the way through to security, to software, to cloud, etc. So we've added a whole bunch of different things, ranging from TPM chips on board to Credential Guard on the devices, to ensure that we secure these devices down completely. And, we have what we call a Microsoft Teams Rooms admin guide online. And there's also a security area on there where you can download documents that talk and go into a bit more detail about exactly what security goes into these devices. Now, of course, when we look at these devices, we also look at licensing, right? Robert, what licenses do these devices need?
We have tailored devices for rooms. So we have either the Teams Rooms Standard or the Teams Rooms Premium license. And they are tailor-made to use in the room context. So they have the right solutions or the right features to be able then to use it for Skype or Teams. You have the audio conferencing and phone system solutions, which means that you could dial in and dial out from the meetings. You can also manage it from Microsoft Intune. So it's really the license to use for a customer who wants to manage their devices by themselves, or a customer who, by role-based access, makes the partner do that for them in Teams Admin Center. So the standard license also brings those devices to be a part of the Teams Admin Center. And the Teams Admin Center, that's the go-to place. So you can get a good overview of all your Teams devices, not just for rooms. You can see the Surface Hubs, that's quite recently released. You can see your Teams phones, your Teams panels, your Teams displays. Everything is in there. It's a good way to have a visibility into what's out there as like an inventory, but also from a health perspective. You can see if it's connected, if there's any issues with the software updates that you need to apply, or from a calling health perspective, you can also go look into the meetings that you've had and use that as something to troubleshoot if there's any issues, or if you get any support requests from your people or the customer in this case, which means that the Teams Admin Center is the place to go to both have the overview and to work with your devices. You can also tap into them so that you can do the settings from Teams Admin Center. So you could go change settings on your actual device, but remotely from Teams Admin Center. So for customers who would like to make their own management or who would like to have a partner do that for them, that's Teams Admin Center.
Got it. Perfect. And when we look at the licensing, the pricing that you see on screen is kind of the average price that you'll see globally. Of course, please do reach out to your CSP partner or your Microsoft account manager, and they'll be able to give you the exact cost for your particular customer. So a great overview in terms of the standard license, which pretty much gives you everything that you need to get your room up and running. Of course, what if your customer cannot manage devices themselves? Maybe they don't have the resource or the capability to manage devices. Maybe your reseller partner doesn't have managed services. That's where Teams Rooms Premium licenses comes in. So with Teams Rooms Premium license, you get everything that you get with the standard license, including Teams Admin Center. But the one biggest benefit that you get out of a Teams Rooms Premium license is the fact that Microsoft will manage your Microsoft Teams Rooms devices for you. So we effectively use an AI-driven managed services. So we have AI bots that sit on each machine, and they effectively will monitor the devices, including any peripherals that are connected to the device, and monitor the network for you. And in a lot of cases, we can identify problems even before the customer identifies a problem. And we can apply those fixes on the fly as well. So using our portal, and we have some further training which you can view, which go into a bit more detail around Microsoft Teams Rooms Premium. But we do have a portal which actually drills down and talks you through, we've identified a problem, we've assigned it to Microsoft, Microsoft will apply the fix. Now, as a reseller partner, just like Robert mentioned earlier on, a reseller partner can also be added as a role-based user on Microsoft Teams Rooms Premium as well. So we really use that premium platform to be able to provide an easier management and less headache for the customer when using Premium. And of course, this particular slide here also talks about how much time that we can save, or a partner or a customer, should I say, a customer could save by using this. It's the easiest way to put it, and which is what I always say to Robert as well, is if you want to manage devices yourself, take out the Microsoft Teams Rooms standard license, have Teams Admin Center, manage devices to your heart's content. If you don't have the resource, or maybe you don't have the capability to manage devices yourself, that's when you would take out Microsoft Teams Rooms Premium. And that is that headache-free management directly from Microsoft. And remember, Microsoft has been doing this for quite a while. From Skype, from Lync to Skype to now Teams, we've had years and years and years of experience of understanding what the most common faults are, what the most common issues are. And we've built the AI around that to understand that if we see a fault, we probably know about why this fault occurs, and we probably know what the fix is. And many, many times we will apply the fix even before the customer is aware. And in the rare case that Microsoft can't do the fix over the air, we will then send an alert to the customer and or to the partner to say, hey, there's a problem in room 101. You need to get in and you need to plug that camera back in. So with that in mind, that hopefully gives you a quick 30-minute rundown and an introduction into Microsoft Teams Rooms devices. Remember, we spoke about those 4 pillars, the 4 pillars that really take into account all the aspects of Microsoft Teams Rooms, from inclusiveness all the way down to security and manage, and the fact that they're flexible, that can scale across different rooms. Hopefully you've enjoyed today's session. Please do reach out to your Microsoft account manager or your PTS manager, where you can learn a lot more. And with that in mind, I'd like to say thank you so much for listening today. And I'll hand over to Robert to end up.
And thank you so much for listening in, and let's keep in touch.